The emergency klaxon echoed through the crystalline halls of the Galactic Council chambers, a sound that hadn't been heard in over 3 standard cycles. When that particular alarm went off, it meant one thing: someone had discovered something that could potentially end civilization as they knew it. Ambassador Krixtal of the Zephyrian Empire stood at the center of the circular chamber, his 6 arms gesticulating wildly as holographic displays flickered around him. His normally pristine blue skin had taken on a sickly green hue, and his 3 eyes darted nervously between the assembled representatives. "Esteemed colleagues," Krixtal began, his voice cracking slightly. "We have a situation of unprecedented magnitude. Our survey team on planet designation Kepler 4-42b has encountered what can only be described as the most terrifying apex predator in known galactic history." The chamber erupted in concerned chittering, clicking, and what sounded like someone having an asthma attack, but was actually just how the Regilian delegate expressed anxiety. Councillor Thexara, a mantis-like being from the Andromeda sector, leaned forward with her compound eyes gleaming. "Define terrifying, Ambassador. Are we talking about acid-spitting capabilities? Psychic domination? Molecular disintegration?" "Worse," Krixtal whispered dramatically. "It's completely unpredictable." The assembled delegates gasped in unison. Predictability was the cornerstone of galactic civilization. Everything had patterns, algorithms, behavioral matrices. Even the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy followed some sort of logical framework. "The creature stands nearly 2 meters tall," Krixtal continued, activating a holographic display that showed grainy footage of something large and dark moving through what appeared to be a forest. "It possesses massive claws capable of rending titanium, powerful jaws filled with razor-sharp teeth, and most disturbing of all, it can seamlessly transition between quadrupedal and bipedal locomotion at will." The Regilian delegate made his asthma noise again, this time louder. "Our xenobiologists have never seen anything like it," Krixtal went on. "It appears to be omnivorous, consuming both plant and animal matter with equal efficiency. It shows no fear of fire, water, or even our survey equipment. And perhaps most chilling of all, it seems to have no regard for the established food chain hierarchy." "What do you mean?" asked Representative Zundar, whose species had evolved from what humans would recognize as very anxious hamsters. "It eats whatever it wants, whenever it wants. Berries, fish, smaller mammals, insects. There's no pattern, no logic. It's as if the creature operates on pure instinct and whim." The chamber fell silent except for the gentle humming of the translation matrices and someone's stomach growling, which might have been either hunger or terror. "I motion for immediate planetary quarantine," declared Councillor Thexara. "This creature represents a clear and present danger to all sentient life." "Seconded," came a chorus of voices, clicks, and whistles from around the chamber. "All in favor of deploying the extermination fleet?" Krixtal asked, though it was clearly a formality at this point. A sea of appendages, tentacles, and various limb-like structures rose in unanimous agreement. It was at this precise moment that the chamber doors slid open with a soft hiss, and Jake Morrison strolled in, holding a steaming cup of coffee and looking like he'd just rolled out of bed, which, given the time difference between Earth and the Galactic Council station, he probably had. "Sorry I'm late," Jake said, settling into the human representative's chair with a yawn. "Traffic was murder coming through the Centauri gate, so what's all the excitement about?" Ambassador Krixtal's 3 eyes fixed on Jake with a mixture of relief and desperation. "Representative Morrison, thank the cosmic winds you're here. We need your expertise on apex predators immediately." Jake raised an eyebrow and took a sip of his coffee. "Okay, shoot. What are we dealing with? Please tell me it's not another one of those situations where someone's pet got loose and is terrorizing a space station." "This is far more serious," Krixtal said, reactivating the holographic display. "Observe." The grainy footage played again, showing the dark shape moving through the forest. Jake squinted at the display, then leaned forward slightly. The creature came into better focus as it stood up on its hind legs to reach something in a tree. "Oh, come on," Jake muttered. "We know it appears docile in this footage," Councillor Thexara interjected quickly. "But our analysis indicates this is clearly hunting behavior. It's surveying the area for prey." Jake blinked slowly. "It's eating berries." "A clever disguise," Representative Zundar squeaked, "luring unsuspecting vertims into a false sense of security." "No, I mean it's literally eating berries," Jake pointed at the screen. "Look, you can see the juice staining its muzzle. And those aren't claws. They're just regular bear claws for climbing and digging." The chamber fell silent. Several delegates exchanged confused glances. Bear? Krikstal asked hesitantly. Yeah, it's just a bear. Probably a brown bear, maybe a grizzly variant. Hard to tell from this footage, but definitely nothing to panic about. Nothing to panic about? The Regillian delegate's voice went up 3 octaves. It's nearly 2 meters tall. When it's standing up, sure. Most bears can do that. It's how they get a better view of their surroundings or reach food in trees. Pretty normal behavior. Jake's casual tone was apparently having the opposite of the intended calming effect. Several delegates had begun what appeared to be hyperventilating, though it was hard to tell with some of the more exotic respiratory systems present. Representative Morrison, Krikstal said carefully, are you telling us that your species is familiar with these creatures? Well, yeah, we share a planet with them, always have. Jake took another sip of coffee. Actually, when I was about 8, my family went camping in Yellowstone, and we had one of these guys wander right through our campsite. My dad just banged a couple of pots together, and it wandered off, no big deal. The silence that followed was the kind of silence that occurs when several dozen alien minds simultaneously try to process information that doesn't fit into their existing worldview. You encountered this creature as a juvenile? Counselor Thexara's voice was barely above a whisper. The bear was probably full-grown, actually. They don't get much bigger than that, unless you're talking about polar bears or maybe a Kodiak. But those are different subspecies. No, I meant you were a juvenile when you encountered it. Oh, right. Yeah, I was just a kid. It was pretty cool, actually. My mom made me stay in the tent, but I could see it through the mesh. It was just looking for food scraps, and when it didn't find any, it left. They're actually pretty shy around humans most of the time. Representative Zundar made a noise that sounded like a tea kettle having an existential crisis. Let me get this straight, Krikstal said slowly. Your species allows its offspring to coexist in the same environment as these apex predators? Well, we don't exactly allow it. They were there first. We just learned to be smart about it. Don't leave food out, make noise when you're hiking so you don't surprise them. Carry bear spray if you're in bear country. Basic common sense stuff. Bear spray? Counselor Thexara leaned forward. A chemical weapon? More like a really aggressive pepper spray. It's actually designed to deter them, not hurt them. Most people never need it, but it's good to have just in case. The alien stared at Jake with expressions ranging from awe to horror to what might have been respect, though it was hard to tell with the species that communicated primarily through color changes. Representative Morrison, Krikstal said finally, either your species is composed entirely of insane daredevils or you have a very different definition of dangerous than the rest of the galaxy. Jake shrugged. Probably a little of both, honestly. Despite Jake's assurances that the creature was just a bear, the Galactic Council had already committed to their course of action. The extermination fleet was already en route, and canceling a military operation of that magnitude would involve paperwork that nobody wanted to deal with. We appreciate your input, Representative Morrison, Krikstal said diplomatically, but we cannot risk the safety of galactic civilization based on one human's casual assessment. Fair enough, Jake replied, though his tone suggested he thought it was anything but fair. But maybe send a smaller team first, just to confirm that it's actually dangerous before you glass the entire continent? And so, 12 hours later, Commander Vexnon of the Galactic Defense Force found himself leading what he had been assured was an elite strike team equipped with the finest military technology the galaxy had to offer. The reality was somewhat less impressive. The team consisted of 8 soldiers from various species, each armed with weapons that could theoretically level a city block, wearing armor that could withstand direct hits from plasma cannons, and carrying enough detection equipment to scan a small moon. They also had enough anxiety medication to sedate a small space station, because apparently facing an unpredictable apex predator was considered a reasonable excuse for panic attacks. Remember, Commander Vexnod announced as their shuttle touched down on the planet's surface, we are dealing with a creature that operates outside all known behavioral parameters. Maintain maximum distance, establish a secure perimeter, and under no circumstances should anyone attempt direct contact. The team nodded solemnly, their various breathing apparatus and translation devices creating a symphony of worried mechanical sounds. The planet itself was actually quite pleasant. Rolling hills covered in green forests, clear streams, and what humans would recognize as a perfectly normal temperate climate. It was the kind of place that would make an excellent vacation destination, if not for the allegedly terrifying monster roaming around. Motion detector shows movement approximately 200 meters northeast, reported Sergeant Claximore, whose species had evolved from something resembling a very nervous gecko. Target appears to be stationary. Stationary how? Commander Vexnon demanded. It's not moving, sir, at all. The team crept forward with all the stealth and grace of a marching band made up entirely of anxious robots. They had sensor arrays sweeping constantly, weapons at the ready, and enough backup plans to handle everything from a full-scale assault to an alien invasion. What they found was a large brown bear sitting in a clearing, peacefully munching on a bush full of berries. "There it is," whispered Commander Vexnon, as if speaking too loudly might trigger an attack. "Deploy the containment field." "Sir, it's just sitting there eating," observed Private Yeaksdale, whose species had remarkably good eyesight. "Exactly. It's luring us into a false sense of security. Classic predator behavior." The bear, completely oblivious to the military operations surrounding it, continued eating berries with the focused determination of someone who had discovered really good berries and intended to eat all of them. "Establishing perimeter at safe distance," Commander Vexnon announced. "Begin recording all behavioral patterns." For the next 30 minutes, the elite strike team watched a bear eat berries. The bear occasionally looked up, noticed the strange metallic objects positioned around the clearing, determined they were not food or threats, and went back to eating berries. "Sir," Sergeant Claxmore reported, "the creature appears to be ignoring us?" "Impossible. It must be planning something." It was at this moment that the bear, having apparently decided the berries at ground level were insufficient, stood up on its hind legs to reach the higher branches. The reaction was immediate and catastrophic. "It's attacking!" screamed Private Yeaksdale, despite the fact that the bear was clearly just trying to reach more berries. "Defensive positions!" Commander Vexton shouted, as his entire team scattered like startled mice. The bear, startled by the sudden commotion, dropped back down to all fours and looked around in confusion. It made a low, huffing sound, which the team's translation software unhelpfully interpreted as incomprehensible, threat vocalization. "It's trying to communicate," Sergeant Claxmore yelled from behind a tree, "possibly summoning others." The bear, now thoroughly annoyed by all the noise, stood up again and made another huffing sound, which roughly translated to, "What the hell is wrong with you people?" But the translation software rendered it as regressive territorial display. That's when Jake's shuttle landed. Jake stepped out, took one look at the scene, professional soldiers cowering behind trees while a confused bear stood in the middle of a clearing, and sighed deeply. "Really," he called out, "this is your terrifying apex predator. He's just trying to eat lunch." "Pairing presentative Mariah," Commander Vexnon's voice cracked with panic. "Maintain safe distance. The creature is in full attack mode." Jake looked at the bear, which had now sat down and was scratching behind its ear with a hind leg. "Yeah, I can see that. He's really going for the throat with that aggressive ear-scratching technique." The bear noticed Jake and looked at him with mild interest, the same way any large mammal might look at a new arrival who didn't seem immediately threatening or interesting. "Don't worry, buddy," Jake said, not to the strike team but to the bear. "These guys are just having a moment. You keep doing your thing." The bear, as if understanding perfectly, went back to eating berries. Jake walked calmly toward the clearing, completely ignoring the frantic hand signals and whispered warnings from the strike team. He moved with the casual confidence of someone who had dealt with this exact situation approximately 0 times in a military context, but hundreds of times in a humans just live with this stuff context. "Representative Morrison, please!" Commander Vexnon's voice was reaching frequencies that probably violated several galactic noise ordinances. "You have no protective equipment, no weapons, no backup plan." "I have a sandwich," Jake replied, pulling a wrapped item from his jacket pocket, "and about 30 years of experience not being eaten by bears." The bear looked up from its berry bush as Jake approached, tilting its massive head in a gesture that the alien's computers immediately flagged as predator evaluating prey. In reality, it was more like human approaching, human sometimes has food, human worth investigating. Jake stopped about 10 feet away and unwrapped his sandwich. Turkey and Swiss, if anyone was keeping track, though the strike team's instruments were too busy detecting elevated biochemical markers indicating imminent attack to notice mundane details like lunch meat. "Hey there, big guy," Jake said conversationally. "Sorry about all the noise. These folks aren't from around here." The bear made a low chuffing sound, which the translation software rendered as progressive territorial vocalization, but which Jake correctly interpreted as, "Oh, food person, hello, food person." "Yeah, I figured you might be hungry. These berries are pretty good, huh?" Jake tore off a piece of his sandwich and tossed it gently toward the bear, being careful not to throw it directly at the animal. "Turkey's probably not your usual thing, but it's pretty good." The bear approached the sandwich piece cautiously, sniffed it thoroughly, and then ate it in one bite. Its expression, to the extent that bears have expressions, suggested mild approval. "A president of Moratory is conducting some kind of feeding ritual," Sergeant Claxon reported breathlessly into his communicator. "The creature is accepting the offering." "It's not a ritual, it's just sharing food," Jake called back. "He's probably been foraging all day. Turkeys got more protein than berries." The bear, having decided that Jake was acceptable company, sat down in the way that large dogs do when they want to be social but not overwhelming. Which is to say, it sat down like a furry mountain that happened to have a face. "This is unbelievable," Commander Vexnon muttered. "How is he not being mauled?" "Because bears don't generally maul people who aren't threatening them," Jake explained patiently. "They're actually pretty chill most of the time. They just want to eat, sleep, and be left alone. Kind of like most intelligent species, really." He tore off another piece of sandwich and offered it to the bear, who accepted it with what could only be described as politeness. The bear's massive claws, which the strike team's equipment had identified as titanium uranium death implements, delicately took the food without so much as scratching Jake's fingers. "See, the thing about bears," Jake continued, apparently giving an impromptu nature documentary while feeding a supposedly terrifying apex predator, "is that they're omnivores, but they're actually mostly vegetarian. This guy probably spends about 80% of his time eating plants, berries, roots, that kind of thing. The other 20% is fish, small mammals, insects, whatever's available." The bear, as if on cue, laid down in the sunny clearing and began grooming itself with the dedication of someone who had just enjoyed a nice snack and was now ready for a nap. "Representative Morrison," Commander Vexnon's voice was now reaching pitches that were probably causing hearing damage to species with sensitive auditory organs. "The creature is exaggerating unknown behavioral patterns." "It's called relaxing," Jake said. "Watch this." To the absolute horror of the watching strike team, Jake sat down on the ground about 6 feet from the bear. The bear looked at him with mild interest, determined he was not a threat, and went back to grooming. "Bears are actually incredibly smart," Jake continued, apparently conducting a nature lecture while sitting next to a creature that the galactic military had been prepared to exterminate. "They have excellent memories, complex social structures, and they can learn to associate humans with food sources. This guy probably knows there's a research station somewhere in the area, and he's figured out that humans sometimes drop interesting things." The bear finished grooming and, with the satisfied sigh of someone who had just enjoyed a good meal and some pleasant company, curled up in the warm sunlight and closed its eyes. "Is it dead?" Private Yeekstol whispered loudly. "It's napping," Jake replied. "Bears sleep about 15 to 20 hours a day, depending on the season and food availability. It's completely normal behavior." Commander Vexnon emerged from behind his tree, weapons still drawn but pointed at the ground. "Representative Morrison, I need you to explain exactly what techniques you used to neutralize this creature." "I didn't neutralize anything. I shared a sandwich with him and let him take a nap. That's not a technique, that's just being polite." "But the feeding ritual." "Not a ritual, just sharing food. Humans do it all the time. It's called hospitality." "And the vocalization patterns you use to communicate with it?" "I talked to him like I'd talk to anybody. He probably didn't understand the words, but tone of voice is pretty universal among mammals." The bear, hearing voices, opened one eye, looked around to confirm that everything was still peaceful, and went back to sleep. "And how do you know it won't attack when it wakes up?" Jake shrugged. "Same way you know your coworkers won't attack you when they wake up from a nap. He's got no reason to. He's not hungry, he's not threatened, he's not protecting territory or cubs. He's just a guy trying to get some sleep." The strike team spent the next hour watching Jake sit companionably near a sleeping bear, occasionally making notes on his tablet or taking pictures with his phone. The bear slept peacefully, occasionally snoring in a way that the military's equipment kept flagging as unaccustomed scenery. Finally, the bear woke up, stretched in the way that all mammals stretch after a good nap, looked around the clearing and apparently decided it was time to go find dinner somewhere else. It stood up, gave Jake what might have been an acknowledging nod, and wandered off into the forest. "Well," Jake said, getting to his feet and brushing off his pants. "That was nice. He seemed like a good guy." Commander Vexnon stared at the spot where the bear had disappeared. "Representative Morrison, what you just accomplished should be impossible according to every xenobiological text in the galactic database." "Maybe your textbooks need updating," Jake suggested. "Or maybe you guys have just been overthinking things." The emergency session of the Galactic Council that followed Jake's successful neutralization of the apex predator threat was, by most accounts, even more chaotic than the first one. Jake sat in his chair, calmly sipping another cup of coffee while projecting images from his tablet onto the main display. As you can see, Jake said, clicking through photos of the bear eating berries, taking a nap, and wandering peacefully through the forest, the creature exhibits completely normal behavior for its species. No aggression, no territorial displays, no hunting behavior directed at sentient beings. Ambassador Crickstall studied the images with the intensity of someone trying to solve a quantum physics equation using only finger paints. But, Representative Morrison, our analysis clearly indicated this was an apex predator of unprecedented danger. Well, yeah, bears are apex predators, Jake agreed. But that doesn't mean they're dangerous to us. Lots of things are apex predators. Doesn't mean they're automatically hostile. But surely, Counselor Thexera interjected, your species takes extraordinary precautions when coexisting with these creatures? Jake pulled up a new image on his tablet. This is my neighbor Bob. He lives in Montana. The image showed a middle-aged human man standing next to a barbecue grill, with a large brown bear visible in the background, calmly eating from what appeared to be a bird feeder. The council chamber fell silent except for the sound of Representative Zundar hyperventilating. Bob sees bears in his backyard pretty regularly, Jake continued. He just brings his garbage cans inside at night, doesn't leave pet food out. Sometimes he has to yell at them to get off his deck, but that's about it. He yells at them. Crystal's voice was barely a whisper. Sure. Hey, bear, get out of here. Usually works. They're not really looking for trouble. Jake clicked to the next image, which showed several bears fishing in a river, while humans watched from a nearby viewing platform. This is from Katmai National Park. Tourists go there specifically to watch bears catch salmon. We've got viewing platforms set up and everything. Last year, over 40,000 people visited just to watch bears do bear things. The silence that followed was the kind of silence that occurs when several dozen highly intelligent beings simultaneously have their entire worldview turned upside down. Your species, Counselor Thexera said slowly, voluntarily travels to observe these apex predators in their natural habitat? Well, yeah, they're pretty cool to watch. Plus, it's educational for the kids. You bring your offspring to observe them. Sure. My daughter's been on 3 bear watching trips. She's got a whole collection of bear photos on her phone. Representative Zundar made a sound like a deflating balloon. Representative Morrison, Crickstall said carefully, perhaps you could help us understand the full scope of your planet's predator situation. Are there other creatures of similar danger level? Jake pulled up another image. This is Max. He belongs to my neighbor on the other side. The image showed a German shepherd sitting in a backyard, tongue hanging out, looking like the goodest boy who ever lived. Dear cosmic winds, screamed Counselor Thexera. It's even larger than the bear. What? No. Max is like 60 pounds. Bears are usually between 300 and 800 pounds, depending on the species and season. But look at those teeth. Those claws, the muscular build clearly designed for pursuit and capture. Max is a pet. He plays fetch and sleeps on the couch. His biggest threat to galactic civilization is maybe stealing your sandwich if you're not paying attention. Ambassador Crickstall was now making a sound like a broken air conditioning unit. Your species domesticates apex predators? Well, dogs aren't really apex predators anymore. We've been breeding them for like 15,000 years. They're basically furry family members at this point. Jake clicked to another image showing a small child hugging a large dog. This is my nephew Tyler with his dog Buddy. Buddy weighs about 90 pounds and is afraid of vacuum cleaners. The council chamber erupted in what could only be described as mass hysteria. Several delegates had to be physically restrained from activating emergency protocols, while others appeared to be having some kind of spiritual crisis. How many of these creatures does your species coexist with? Crickstall asked when the chaos had died down to a manageable level of panic. Well, there are about 900 million dogs on Earth, give or take. Maybe 600 million cats, though they're harder to count because a lot of them are feral. Then you've got all the wild animals. Cats? Representative Zundar's voice had gone up so high it was probably only audible to species with exceptional hearing. Yeah, cats are pretty cool. They're smaller than dogs usually, but they're actually better hunters. My sister has 3 of them. Jake showed them a picture of a tabby cat sleeping in a sunny window. This is Mr. Whiskers. He's killed approximately 200 mice, 37 birds, and 1 small lizard. He also purrs when you pet him, and likes to sleep on warm laundry. Ambassador Crickstall slowly stood up, walked to his podium, and activated the emergency protocols. By the authority vested in me by the Galactic Council, I hereby declare Earth a Class X death world, with a recommendation that all contact be limited to essential diplomatic missions only. What's Class X? Jake asked. It's a new classification we just created, Krikstal replied. It means your planet is so dangerous that we can't even properly categorize how dangerous it is. And Representative Morrison, Councillor Thexara added, you are hereby designated as an official apex predator whisperer with full diplomatic immunity and a recommendation that all species treat you with the respect due to someone who has clearly mastered the art of surviving in impossible conditions. Jake looked around the chamber at the faces of beings who were looking at him like he was some kind of mythical warrior who had just casually mentioned defeating dragons before breakfast. You know I just shared a sandwich with a bear, right? It's not like I fought it with my bare hands or anything. Bare hands? Representative Zundar shrieked. You considered fighting it with your bare hands? No, I meant, never mind. 3 hours later, Jake was back in his quarters on the diplomatic station, staring at a communication screen that showed his wife Sarah sitting at their kitchen table, back on Earth. Behind her, he could see their golden retriever Murphy sprawling across the couch like he owned the place, which, according to the Galactic Council's new classification system, he basically did. So let me get this straight, Sarah said, trying not to laugh. The entire galactic community is terrified of bears? Not just bears, Jake replied, rubbing his temples. Apparently they're terrified of everything. I showed them a picture of Max from next door and they nearly declared martial law. Max? The German shepherd who's afraid of butterflies? That's the one. They classified him as an apex predator. They also classified Mr. Whiskers as a micro-predator of exceptional lethality. Sarah lost it. Mr. Whiskers, the cat who got stuck in a paper bag last week and had to be rescued by a 6-year-old? Apparently the fact that he's killed mice makes him a dangerous hunter in their eyes. They don't seem to understand the concept of pest control. On the screen, their daughter Emma bounced into view, wearing her school backpack and looking excited. Dad, did you bring back any cool alien technology? Tommy's dad went to the trade conference on Centauri Prime and brought back a gravity-defying pen. Sorry, kiddo, I spent most of my time explaining that bears aren't going to end galactic civilization. That's weird. We saw bears at Yellowstone last month and they were super chill. Yeah, well, apparently that makes us either incredibly brave or completely insane, depending on who you ask. Emma shrugged, with the casual indifference of someone who had grown up in a world where dangerous predators were just part of the scenery. Can I tell my class that aliens think our dog is scary? I guess. But maybe don't mention that they're also terrified of cats. I don't want to be responsible for giving any galactic ambassadors heart attacks. Sarah leaned back in her chair, and Jake could see Murphy in the background, currently engaged in an epic battle with a squeaky toy that was winning. So, what happens now? Are they going to avoid Earth? Pretty much. They classified us as a Class X death world and gave me some kind of honorary title. Apparently I'm now an apex predator whisperer with full diplomatic immunity. That's going on your business cards, Sarah said immediately. I was thinking more along the lines of just not mentioning it to anyone. Are you kidding? Do you know how impressed the HOA is going to be when they find out you're officially recognized as a predator whisperer by the galactic community? Jake groaned. Please, don't tell the HOA. Too late. I'm already composing the email. Their son David wandered into view, still in his soccer uniform and covered in mud. Hey Dad, can you ask the aliens if they want to see my science project? I'm raising butterflies. Absolutely not. They'd probably classify butterflies as aerial assault units. What about my ant farm? David, they think Mr. Whiskers is a deadly predator. I'm pretty sure they'd consider your ant farm a military installation. Cool. Jake looked at his family, sitting in their completely normal kitchen in their completely normal house, surrounded by what the galactic community now considered an incomprehensible menagerie of deadly creatures. Murphy had finally defeated the squeaky toy and was now celebrating by rolling around on the couch. Outside the window, Jake could see Mrs. Peterson walking her poodle, completely unaware that she was apparently engaging in an activity that would terrify most of the known galaxy. Oh honey, Sarah said. I forgot to mention, Tom's thinking about getting bees. Bees? Yeah, you know, for honey. He's really into that whole sustainable living thing. Jake stared at the screen. Sarah, please tell me you're not planning to mention the bees to anyone. Why not? Because I just spent 3 hours explaining to the Galactic Council that bears are basically harmless vegetarians who occasionally eat fish. If they found out that humans voluntarily keep colonies of flying insects that can inject venom and coordinate group attacks, they'd probably quarantine the entire solar system. But they're just bees, Jake. They make honey. That's what I said about bears. Look how that turned out. Sarah grinned. Well, at least you'll have plenty of material for your next council meeting. There's not going to be a next council meeting. They're scheduling all future meetings around bear hibernation season because they think I might bring one as a diplomatic aid. That's actually not a bad idea. Ambassador Bear has a nice ring to it. Jake sighed and looked out the window of his quarters at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy were probably having emergency meetings about the terrifying death world called Earth, where apex predators roamed freely and humans just went about their daily lives, like it was perfectly normal, which he supposed it was. Hey Dad, Emma called out. When you get home, can we go camping again? I want to get more bear pictures for my collection. Sure, kiddo. Just maybe don't mention that to anyone from the Galactic Council. Why not? Because they'd probably think you're planning a military reconnaissance mission. Emma considered this. That's actually kind of cool. Can I put that on my college applications? Jake looked at his perfectly normal, completely sane family, living their perfectly normal lives on a planet that was apparently so dangerous that advanced alien civilizations were afraid to visit it. You know what? He said finally. Sure, why not? At this point, I'm pretty sure reality stopped making sense somewhere around the time I had to explain to a galactic military commander that bears just want to eat berries and take naps. That's the spirit, Sarah said. Welcome to being the official representative of the scariest planet in the galaxy. Great. I'll add that to my resume right under Apex Predator Whisperer. Don't forget diplomatic immunity. Right. Thanks, honey. I love you all, and I'll see you in a few days. Try not to adopt any more deadly predators while I'm gone. No promises, Sarah said. Mrs. Chen's cat just had kittens. Jake closed the communication link and leaned back in his chair. Outside his window, the stars looked the same as they always had, but somehow the universe felt like a much more absurd place than it had been a few days ago. Somewhere out there, the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy were probably having nightmares about Earth, and somewhere else, a perfectly normal brown bear was probably taking a nap in a sunny clearing, completely unaware that it had single-handedly changed the course of galactic diplomacy. Jake raised his coffee cup in a toast to the absurdity of it all. Here's to you, buddy. Thanks for keeping things interesting.